Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put the phones on in there. You could hear the audio in the that's actually going on to the tape. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, let's see now. Testing. Oh, we ought to have something on there now.
Five. Except for items listed under miscellaneous communications, please make known your desire to speak before the council when an item appears on the docket by approaching the podium or by leaving your name with the clerk prior to the appearance of the item on the docket. Under special order of business this morning, we have Dr. C. Baker Pearl, pastor of Bethel AME Methodist Church, in the audience this morning, and I would ask you to join with me as we rise and have Reverend Pearl give the invocation. Eternal God, our Father, we are grateful to Thee for the opportunity of being here this morning, for the part that each of us is to play, for the duty before us, for the challenge that meets us. And we pray that in our hearts there may be that concern, not only for our own welfare, our own district, but for the entire city, that we shall be interested, to be sure, in the avenues, the streets, the towers, the buildings, but more than everything else, the hearts of men, the depression, the sadness, the anxiety. Make us truly Thy servants. May this be a nation unto God and a city unto God. Forgive us for the many times that we have overlooked the larger things that we ought to do and have done the smaller things with ease. We are grateful, O God, for each and every one here. Be with the mayor and his associates. Dedicate us all to noble purposes. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Mike Shaver, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. In addition to those two items, we have under special order of business this morning, presentation of service awards. We have in the audience a group of employees who have been with the city for a number of years. At this time, I'd like to introduce Fred Lawrence, our city auditor.
Members of the council. Miss Ruth Kelso, senior stenographer, began her career with the city of San Diego on November the 6th, 1940, as clerk in the police department, juvenile bureau, maintaining records of bicycle licenses. By civil service examination and promotion, she became an intermediate stenographer in 1947.
Fred, I hate to interrupt you in the middle of things, but you've got such a good-looking employee standing next to you. Why don't you both turn around and face the audience?
Thank you, Mayor. In 1954, Ms. Kelso was appointed secretary to the auditor and controller through promotional examination.
Is it that? I'm not the only one that stutters.
She has served as secretary to two auditor controllers, Mr. John McCloken and myself. In addition to being a skilled secretary, Ruth has made a sincere effort to expand her knowledge of work relating to the Auditor Controller's Office by taking various courses, including the International City Manager's Course in Municipal Finance Administration and a class in Data Processing and Computer Programming. Ruth is a certified professional secretary. Her certification is made by the Institute of Certified Secretaries and is awarded after an intensive 2-day nationwide examination. She received this distinction just recently and is the first, and at the present time the only city employee entitled to the designation of Certified Professional Secretary. Mayor and members of the council, it is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Ruth Kelso.
Thank you, Fred, and I believe Councilman Walsh has a presentation to make.
Well, Your Honor, if it's your desire to have the good-looking people face the audience, then I'll have Ruth remain this way, and I'll talk to her this side.
That's appropriate.
I figured I'd say it before you did. Ruth, it gives me real pleasure not only to commend you for the fine service that you've given the city, but I think there's an additional bit of credit that you bring not only in performing your duties here at the city and doing a good job recognized by the council, but I think it's always good to have employees who not only are recognized in the city but bring greater recognition upon themselves for their activity and the national awards and so on that they've received. And Ruth, in listening to the list of awards that you've received, I'm sure that in addition to the satisfaction that they give you for knowing that you're recognized a little bit, you bring quite a bit of recognition to our fine city. And so on behalf of the council, I'd like to present you with your 25-year pin and congratulate you for your real fine service to our city. There you go.
Thank you very much. Fred Gabrielson, our city engineer.
Your Honor and members of the council, I'd like to introduce my friend Jim Waddell. Hi, Jim. Assistant Civil Engineer Jim Waddell came to San Diego from South Dakota in 1940 and worked for a local aircraft plant during World War II. On November 5th, 1945, he joined the Water Department as a surveyor and worked mostly in the Black Canyon area north of Ramona. In 1946, he came to the City Engineering Department, and that's when I first met Jim, and we worked together in the field division for several years and had many mutual problems that we worked out together. At present, he is an inspector of miscellaneous construction in the northern area of the city. Jim is married, a son in Mesa College, a married daughter, and 2 grandsons. By the way, I hadn't heard about these. I've got one. So his hobbies other than grandsons are fishing, hunting, and traveling, and also house building. A lot of his traveling is done in the backcountry of San Diego. He has at all times been a dedicated and conscientious public employee, and our department hopes that he will be with us a long time in the future. I am proud to introduce Jim Waddell.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Hom has, Deputy Mayor Hom has a presentation to make.
Jim, congratulations, 20 years of service. Indeed, pleasure for me. I have here, Jim, in my hands a lapel pin with a red ruby on it and shines with brilliance, and we certainly take pleasure in presenting this to you for your dedicated efforts to maintain to dedicate your good service to the city of San Diego. Best wishes to you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Gabrielson, finish your script.
Another close friend of mine, we worked together many years, is Frank Query, Your Honor, and
members of the City Council. Frank Query, Associate Civil Engineer, came from Iowa by the way of Nebraska University and didn't get to San Diego until 1927. He's just a new beginner. He worked first for the OU Miracle Company, remodeling Balboa Park streets and buildings for the 1935 exposition, then for the City of Los Angeles when the first aqueduct was brought in from Colorado River. He inspected ordnance plants in the Midwest during the early years of World War II, and still later he worked with the Tavares Construction Company building concrete ships in National City. All of this experience Mr. Query put to good use when he came to the city of San Diego on November 29th, 1945, and I think Frank has worked in almost every position in the city engineering department since he arrived. One of the first things that Frank was assigned was to put through a uniform method of handling subdivisions. He developed the department's first control system. It's the part of the department that checks all of our plans and coordinates plans with the utility companies and other companies. He is now an associate civil engineer in charge of subdivisions. Frank plans to work one more year. At that time, he's going to divide his time between traveling, remodeling homes, and writing. His wife, who is in the audience, and a son, and he has a son with a state highway, and he also is a recent grandfather. And he says that it says here, and I didn't realize that your new grandson is already learning to swim. I'm pleased to present Frank Query.
Thank you very much, and I think that Mr. Scheidel has a presentation to make.
Frank, it's real nice to find out why we have such wonderful relations with the State Highway Department, and I think the liaison that you and your son have must be helping us a great deal. It's a pleasure to present you with your 20-year award. It's the city seal, of course, with a ruby, and we know you plan to retire in a year, so we want to see a lot of you in the next year. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Ed, I'm sorry to hear his wife is in the audience and he had to have his son with the state highway. Jim Fairman from the Pine Division. This is an unusual biological arrangement.
David South is a principal planner in charge of our zoning division. He began his career with the city on October 29, 1945. 9 years later, at the time of the establishment of the Board of Zoning Adjustment, Mr. South was selected to fill the newly created position of zoning administrator, the position he holds today. In the capacity of zoning administrator, Mr. South represents the city in the administration of ordinances relating to zoning. And exercising the authority vested in this position, Mr. South has demonstrated fairness and impartiality while maintaining the highest regard for the rights of the citizens of San Diego. As the council is aware, this is a position which requires a great deal of integrity and a great deal of patience in explaining ordinances and procedures and in conducting public hearings regarding variances. In this regard, Mr. South has done an exceptional job, in my opinion. He is to be congratulated for the key role he has played in the development of good government in the city of San Diego. It's a pleasure to introduce David South.
Thank you, sir. And Mrs. Cobb has a presentation to make.
It's a privilege to speak to Dave South this morning. He just came back from a vacation that I hear was very tremendous. Was this a freighter you were on? It must have been a ball. We'll have to hear more about that later. You looked glad to. I bet he even has pictures. You looked refreshed and ready to go back to work, and we're mighty happy to present you. These are cufflinks Each of them with the seal of the city, and each marked with 20 years. Congratulations to you on your 20th anniversary, and we hope you're around for quite a while.
Fire Chief Ray Shoecraft.
Mayor Kerr and Council, with a great deal of pride and pleasure that I introduce to you Fire Captain Charles Causey. He's a native San Diegan. He became a member of the fire department in November 7th, 1945. He is presently in charge and stationed at Station 5 at 19th University. He's in charge of the firefighting companies there and directs them in the firefighting activities. He gives many demonstrations throughout the school and firefighting activities in the various schools, and recently in the McKinley Elementary School. Chuck and his wife Marion have 2 daughters. Catherine, 16, which attends Crawford High School, and Christine, attending Pershing School. Captain Causey's main off-duty interest is in photography and firefighting. It's a great deal of pleasure to introduce to the city a dedicated servant, Captain Charles Causey.
Thank you very much. And Councilman Wallace has a presentation to make to you.
Congratulations, Chuck. I won't go into the normal spiel here on what the council thinks of the fire department. As you know, we feel that we have one of the finest fire departments in the country, if not the finest. I noticed that one of your hobbies is photography, and not being real active in photography, but looking at some pictures, I think probably some of the most exciting pictures I've ever seen are of firemen in action, and some of the best photography that's ever been taken have been of fire scenes and so on, at least that I've seen. And I'm sure that you don't have too many of those since you're busy fighting the fire. But again, on behalf of the City Council, Chuck, I want to present you with your 20-year pin, and I'm looking forward to seeing you staying with us a lot longer, and congratulations on behalf of the city for a real fine job.
Thank you. At this time, I again take pleasure in presenting Captain Jack B. Clark. Was born in Harrisburg, Illinois, attended schools in Illinois, and also in Detroit, Michigan. He was smart enough to come to San Diego. Came to San Diego in 1942, joined the fire department in November 1945. Went through the ranks, presently assists in running the station, assisting the newly formed photo lab in the fire department carpenter shop. Captain Clark and his wife Frances have 2 children, Richard, 22, who attends San Diego State College, and Linda, 13, who attends Wilson Junior High School. Captain Clark's off-duty hobbies are woodworking, photography, art, fishing, and hiking. It was a great deal of pleasure that I introduced Captain James B. Clark, Jack B. Clark.
Thank you very much, and Harry Shadow has a presentation to make. Again, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to present a 20-year award, and I was observing the wonderful condition you fellows are in. The audience might be interested in knowing that Fred Causey and I graduated from high school together, and look at the shape he's in comparison to me. Yeah, it's a real pleasure. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
I'd like to introduce Fireman Luther Cook, born in Elmore City, Oklahoma. Came to San Diego in 1938. In the present time, Mr. Cook is stationed at 4711 Voltaire, which is Station 15. His duties include maintaining the station apparatus, making home inspections for fire hazards. Luther Cook is the leader of the Red Cross in training Red Cross instructors throughout all of the city, and gives demonstrations regularly through various resuscitation methods and all. Mr. Cook and his wife, Laura, have 2 children, a son, Terry, attending San Miguel, and a daughter, Joyce, 15, attending Warren Walker School. Luther's off-duty hobbies are electronics and traveling in the family's trailer and first aid. I'm most pleased to introduce Luther Cook.
Thank you very much. And Councilman Kirby has an award to make. Luther, stand over here by the microphone if you would. I have a 20-year pin for you with a ruby in it, similar to the seal above the mayor's dais there. And I think that the people of San Diego, taxpayers, we're all taxpayers, should appreciate the fire department. I'll mention a couple of more statistics. The fire department covers over 300 square miles. They have one of the lowest rates in the country, fire rates, because of their fine work, and also we have the fewest number of firemen per 1,000 people of most any major city in the United States. Congratulations, men like you that help us make this record.
It isn't very often that I get an opportunity to get in the act here, but this morning, because we do have a department head who is to receive his pin, I'd like to suggest that 50 years ago, this city council had on it a councilman who was responsible for the creation of this adjunct to our city government. Mr. Lou Fay. Millard, would you like to step up here with him? His boss is with him this morning. Millard Wade is the chairman of the Civil Service Commission, and Lou Fay is our director of personnel and responsible to the commission. Lou Fay completes 15 years of service with the city of San Diego, and he not completes it, he just finished 15 years, going to stick around a while, I think. He's been a long-time resident of the city of San Diego. As I said before, his father served on this city council 50 years ago. Lou was educated in our local grammar schools, graduated from high school in Long Beach, and attended Caltech and UCLA. After a varied career, which included restaurant management, Lou joined the California Department of Employment, where he held a series of high-level administrative positions during and after World War II. On November 20th, 1950, he was hired by the city of San Diego as a Personnel Technician 3. He was quickly promoted to Assistant Personnel Director on August 1st, 1952, and then to Personnel Director on September the 29th, 1958, a position that he now holds. Lou is married. He has two sons, both of whom are talented musicians, as is Lou himself. He is also an experienced small boat enthusiast. He owns a sailboat based at Shelter Island. Shelter Island? That's in San Diego Bay. You better move it over to Mission Bay where we get the taxes on it. Lou's tenure as personnel director has seen some excellent relationships develop between the Civil Service Commission, the mayor, the city council, city manager, and the city employees. The efficient workforce which we have in the city of San Diego is partially due, and a large part due, to the efforts of Lou Fay and our good Civil Service Commission. Lou, I'd like to present to you your 15-year lapel button, indicating a long tenure of service with the city of San Diego. I hope you're around for quite some time to come. Congratulations. Mildred, take it back to the word. Stop the resolution of presentation of service awards. Call the roll. Approve the minutes? Approval of the minutes. Call a roll on approval of the minutes. Push the button. Unanimous. Notice leading the auditorium, an ex-city employee, Mr. Harry Halsey, our planning director. I'd like to introduce to those who are still in the audience the two new councilmen-elect who are sitting on the panel this morning. They will not be voting, but they're here as observers pending their installation in their official jobs, Mr. Floyd Morrow and Mr. Mike Schaefer. Time's up. Item number 5 on the docket is a hearing. It's paving and otherwise improving 17th Street, 18th Street, Elm, 16th, 15th, Donnox, Evergreen, Elder, Coronado Avenue, and Value Avenue in the South San Diego area. We're now at the resolution confirming the assessment. We have some appeals to the City Council. Mr. Engineer, do you want to give us a report?
We have 7 appeals representing 1.5%. The majority of the appeals are centered around hardship, don't particularly want to pay for the improvement. One is they thought they were getting sidewalks when in fact the plans did not call for sidewalks. Another one is centered around a drainage problem which we've discussed with them and pointed out how this can be solved. One of them is in connection with a driveway which needs to be rebuilt at the expense of the property owner.
Can you talk a little louder, Mr. Blockhead?
As I said, there were 7 protests representing 1.5%, mostly hardship, financial difficulties. One in connection with they thought they were getting sidewalks, which the plans did not call for, and another was in connection with the drainage, which we have discussed with them and pointed out how this can be solved. The other one is in connection with the driveway, which needs to be reconstructed at the expense of the property owner. This property owner is an absentee owner, and we were not able to discuss it with him at the time of construction.
Your Honor,
Mr. Ross?
if I'm not mistaken, this is a tremendous reduction in the amount of opposition, because when we went through our feasibility hearings and had our initial hearings on this project, there were more protests which were resolved by expanding the district and some other things. And unless there's somebody in the audience to be heard, due to the fact that there's only 1% of the people protest, I would move. Anyone in the audience, Your Honor?
Let's call for those in the audience who wish to be heard on item number 5. Wish to speak, ma'am? Come on up to the microphone.
My name is Agnes Kosick, and I don't know whether the gentleman was referring to me when he made mention of the driveway. The place that we have on 17th, the corner of 17th and Donick, is a rental. We receive $120 a month from it. It's unfurnished, and they pay their utilities, so it does contribute to our income. The driveway that was there extended out to cover the dirt section of the street. Before this was the work was done down there, there was a blacktop street both on 17th and Donick. It didn't have curbing, but it was let's say better than what was on Dahlia and 18th and some of the other streets. At any rate, when they completed the work, they left our driveway. I've sent a picture along with my letters.
I have it here.
And you can see I had a purse that's approximately 15 inches high sitting down in front of the drop-off. The tenants can no longer get their car in there. It's made the garage almost unusable for them. They're not happy about it, and I'm not happy about it. And it seems to me that in doing this, I realize that you're not obligated, when sidewalks are not put in, to do anything about the property owner's, how shall I say, driveway up on their property, but to leave it in a condition like this where it makes the garage unusable, I don't think is fair to us, because we're going to have to spend better than $100 trying to get that fixed. Our neighbors next door had this happen, but the young man is in the Navy, and he's quite handy. And they just simply removed their driveway and filled it with grass, but because they were using their garage for a workshop. But our tenants were using that as a garage. And it's made that garage unusable now for months. And this is why I'm protesting. Also, I feel that I spoke before at the meeting when it was called many, many months ago in regard to putting these improvements in, and I was in favor of it. But I did ask at that time, it couldn't be considered to put sidewalks in, because that's quite a neighborhood for school children. There's 2 schools, grammar schools, within a very short distance, and the children have been walking in the street. Now with these it still leaves the whole section that would have been sidewalks uncovered. I mean, it's dry now, but when it rains, it's going to be nothing but thick mud, and the children will be walking in the street again.
You're on 18th and Donick?
I'm on the southwest corner of 17th and Donick.
17th.
As I understand it, some of the people around there had sidewalks put in, and it averaged out about, if I can remember, something like $2.50 a running foot. At any rate, I'm sure that the people, we would have been hit hardest because we have 155 frontage on one street and 50 on another. But I was willing to go that if there were sidewalks put in. Actually, the neighborhood does look pretty dingy yet. I mean, this raw mud or raw earth sticking out there, the street doesn't do a great deal for it. And I feel that since we were going to, this was over $1,300 to us, another couple of $100 or $300 or $400 wouldn't have made that much difference.
I have a question. There's no restriction stopping this lady from going ahead and having sidewalks put in. Is there anything we can do to guide her and assist her in that? Because it actually would probably be less expensive without running through the 1911 Act procedure.
You see, excuse me, Mr. Seidel, we have the 1,300 and so forth put away in a savings and loan, and actually it's set aside to pay this assessment in full.
Well, this is just.
But I didn't want to pay it until I made this protest because I feel that the contractors who did the work should do something about my driveway before I pay it.
Mr. Watt? Point of information on the street in front of her house. Was there any change in the official grade as designated before the project began?
Just one moment, I'll check.
While he's checking, I might make mention of one other thing. The people next to us on 17th did have a sidewalk put in, mainly because they have 2 young children, and they wanted to use the baby buggy and the push cart. Well, they have actually gone down to the corner in the other direction from us. But the utilities company came along and put a pole right smack dab in the middle of the sidewalk. So you can't even get a baby buggy without by on either side without going into the street. And this seems to me a little bit.
Is the sidewalk adjacent to the curb, or is there a separate?
It's just a regulation. It was.
No, is there a parking space between the sidewalk and curb, or is the sidewalk adjacent to the curb?
Right offhand, sir, I can't remember. I'm not down there too much.
There may be
a
problem of right away. I don't know. We might check that one out.
Yeah. Because it's a very peculiar place to have a telephone pole, and this is not on a corner. They're on an inside lot.
Let's see if we can check that one out.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Lockhead?
It was not previously established.
There was no previous grade established in there?
Correct. Therefore, the grade was established by this improvement.
Your interpretation, Mr. Engineer, is that we have no liability on the difference in grade structure there?
That is correct, Your Honor.
That's your
This is work that needs to be done. The adjustment of driveways on private property to meet the improvement is an obligation of the property owner.
Unless we change the grade.
Well, yes, that's correct.
Question?
Well, Your Honor, I really don't. I don't see what we could do in this instance. The contractor was instructed and bid on the job as done. There was no official grade established beforehand. There is some work that remains in connecting the street to the driveway, or the driveway to the street, but I don't think we would be within our rights, even if we wanted to go ahead and do that work. Is this a fair assumption?
May I inquire, please? Then, in other words, what I had in mind was being able to make an appeal to the man who did the work. I thought that it was his obligation and not particularly the city's. The main reason I was protesting was the fact that it seems to me that people developing their property and having it thus set, don't necessarily, or how shall I say, have it impaired or an impediment put there by the city. I thought the city was mainly to sort of improve and help property owners. And the property owners in turn go along with the assessments and so forth. This hasn't been a particular improvement to this piece of property for us at all, and yet I've got $1,300 and something put away to pay it. And I'm willing to do it, but I still don't think it's fair to have this added expense added to us also.
As I understand it, had a grade been established previously by the city?
Now, I am ignorant of what you're trying to
I haven't said it yet, so...
No, I mean, you said, is there a grade established?
I didn't ask the question, I was making a statement.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir.
Had the city established a grade at some previous date, as they do for most streets, and then changed the grade which they had previously established, then, as I understand it, the city would be obligated to take care of this situation.
Well, they did change the grade of the street. I mean, they lowered it about 2 feet.
But as the engineer mentioned, a grade had never been established for the city, and so the grade was established at the time the improvements were put in. So actually there was not a change in grade, and a contractor was aware of this, and his contract did not obligate him to make any adjustments for this grade.
In other words, I have no recourse then at all other than to fix it myself and pay the assessment besides this? What good has the city of San Diego done down there in the South Bay?
Well, I'd like to make a statement. If we had put in sidewalks as you had requested, if we had done that, you would have paid for that.
Really?
All right. So you have a job of completion of which you would normally be obligated to pay for anyway, sidewalks. You have the money to pay for sidewalks, and I'm sure that the contractor would be tickled to death to put in sidewalks and at the same time put in the necessary attachment devices that are necessary, and it's rightful that you pay for the whole job. Even if it were included in the 1911 Act, it would still have to be paid for by you, the curbs and sidewalks, and any attachment such as lowering this drive or whatever it may be would have to be done there. But I think if you contact the contractor, and maybe our engineers can put you together, you might find that you're going to get everything that you want for less money than you would have been able to go through in the 1911 Act.
This is possible, but have you looked at that picture?
Yes.
You realize what would have to be done? It isn't just necessary of connecting a sidewalk and a driveway and a street. There is an angle there. Have you ever tried to drive a car down a sharp angle like that? That would mean tearing up that driveway for another 6 feet all the way up to the...
This has nothing to do with the hearing. Actually, this is not a city responsibility.
Actually, it all goes back to the fact they dropped the street 2 feet lower than it was previous to this.
Your Honor,
Mr. Hahn?
I think perhaps we might want to establish, apparently there's a problem here, but let me ask the lady, what is it that you are asking the city to do, and then we will try to answer you from our policy and from our legal department whether it is within our realm and whether it's within our jurisdiction and pertain to our policy.
Thank you, Mr. Hahn. What I'm actually saying is this. The street was lowered 2 feet. It's not only my property. Everybody's property around there looks very peculiar. They're going to have a problem eventually with fences, with driveways and everything else, because this is not my concern. I was merely asked to make my own protest, and this is it. The fact that they did lower that street and left that slab, as you can see, it's about 3 or 4 inch slab, is going to necessitate an awful lot of work. If we got out, we could probably get out with sledgehammers, I don't know, and knock it out ourselves. Then it's all going to have to be re-put in, not just the 2 feet or 3 feet connecting the sidewalk. I mean, if we put the sidewalk in, we still have an angle about like that from the sidewalk up to the present cement that's in there, or else we're going to have to take that cement all the way out and make it a greater angle.
Yes.
And this, you see, is going to either cost, well, it's going to cost money and work also. And I feel that our assessment has been high enough.
Well, all right. We pave many streets throughout the city. This is 375 square miles in our city. Let me ask the engineer, what is our policy on this? These things occur periodically. What's the city policy on matters of this?
The city policy has always been that the reconstruction of driveways or fences or sidewalks on private property, in order to meet the improvement, is an obligation of the property owner, and all of the expense thereto is assumed by the property owner.
Even when this is a detriment to the property? Was it an impediment to the use of dwellings thereon?
That's correct.
If this is necessary in order to meet the improvements of the street, then this is correct. If it's considered a detriment, yes.
Your Honor, I can make this observation. Assume our policy was that we did take care of these things. Let's assume that was our policy. If it cost us $150 to take care of yours, the next one would be billed right back to you. You'd have to pay for it one way or the other.
Well, I'm paying for it as is
No,
now.
you're not.
I'm going to have to
Ma'am.
make the arrangement.
Ma'am, you didn't pay for a sidewalk, and you didn't pay for any
I'm not
adjustment.
speaking about that, Mr. Segal. I'm saying that we're going to have to stand the cost of this and the work.
Then what is the
That's what's already
problem?
been done.
You're going to have to pay for it before or after.
Well, what was the problem of putting the streets in? There was 2 streets in there to begin with.
Your
There's
Honor,
no improvement.
Mr. Ross, if I might interrupt, I think we're getting into a
An argument.
personal
I'm
debate.
sorry.
into a personal debate. I think possibly one of the things that might be able to do, this is, of course, the problem that legally we don't have an opportunity to do anything. I think if our engineers would get together with the woman, as Mr. DeKirby suggested before, outline what could be done, and in all probability, if experience is any guide, it will be cheaper doing it since you have the cash ready to do it without going through our 1911 Act, because we have administrative and 10%
I
legal
realize
fees.
that. I'm
But-
not particularly kicking about sidewalks. I think it would be probably cheaper. But what I'm saying is that by virtue of having this improvement done, it has been a detriment to our property. And I wondered if there was any recourse I had through the city.
Presently, there is none, ma'am, at this point in the hearings, and we have no power to do anything, and so I would assume then you want to go and protest for the project and be listed as a protestant. Is this correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And then, Mr. Engineer, if you would meet with the lady afterwards and then see if we can resolve something, assuming that we're going ahead and adopting this program to try and resolve it as best we can, okay?
See if we can give her a grade line on the curb, on the sidewalk and the correction of her problem. This may assist her to some extent. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
All right.
Anyone else in the audience wish to be heard on item number 5? Yes, sir. Yes.
Your Honor, gentlemen, ladies, I just come back from overseas. My wife said to fix the street. I live on 1616 Elder, that's Elder Avenue.
Elder?
Elder,
Elder,
on 16th Street.
Yes, sir. Your name and address for the clerk?
John M. Dilger, 1616 Elder Avenue in Turtle Beach.
Thank you.
Right across the street from me, we got a half a street. The street is fixed, completed, down by the South Bay Park. Both sides of the street was completed. Went down to the park and stopped. And just a half a street from there on down. I got my side of the street fixed. It's been paved and curb put in. But I was wondering, are they going to fix the other side of that street?
Your Honor, I can't hear the gentleman. Can we wait till we get the noise stopped?
We got
Someone on the phone, see if we can stop the noise. Gentleman's asking, he's on a half-width street. I remember, Mr. Engineer, would you like to explain that half-width street? And the question he's asking is, the other half going to be developed?
Can you hear me? We have no plans at the present time to pave the other half. Certainly, it needs to be paved and will be paved sometime in the future. When this is paved, the property owners on the other side will be paying the entire cost of the other half of the street. You're only paying for your half at the present time.
People across the street will pay for their half.
Right.
Now, what was the reason why that street wasn't developed?
We do not have sufficient right-of-way at this time to pave the full width. This is why we only paved it half-width.
Is that the piece that abutted into Imperial Beach?
No, this is not directly into Imperial Beach. It's right adjacent to the city community center there, but it is 3 or 4 blocks from Imperial Beach.
Okay.
Your Honor?
Yes,
I remember when we discussed this, and one of the problems that we're going to be faced with is 2 lanes of traffic on a half a width street. And I thought at that time
I thought it was
We
resolved.
discussed that we amended the rolls and everything, continued the hearings to bring it back on, and I thought it was, like Your Honor said, I thought it was resolved.
You're referring to 16th Street, which is in the category where we did pave Half-Width Street. This is another project which will be coming up for confirmation of assessments in a couple weeks.
Well, the only thing that's holding us back is the lack of the right-of-way.
And also acceptance of the property owners for paving the other half.
We've initiated X before, and if this is going to leave a hole in that system down there, I certainly suggest the engineers proceed on it.
Well, we will evaluate it under those conditions. However, there is not the traffic problem involved here as present in that block of 16th where we did initiate the half-width improvement.
Oh, we did initiate in the other,
Yes.
and this is a different street.
Yes.
Isn't it? Off the cuff, I'd say it's not a real good policy to put in half streets.
I'd have to agree with that. What happens, all the traffic tries to go on a half street that's improved, and I would encourage the engineer to proceed, even with the council initiated, to get the other half paved. Any other questions, sir?
Yes. Does the property owners have to have the permission, the city has to have the permission of the property owners to take that 15-foot or whatever they need, or 30-foot right away?
Yes, we'd have to either get their permission or condemn it.
It was not in a 1911 act, was it, that the right of way was in that street?
Not on that side.
Not on that side.
That's all, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to be heard on item number 5?
Your Honor, I move that we close the hearing.
Question?
Morris Sammy is my name. I was 1824 Coronado Avenue. And gentlemen, I'm sorry I was late. I believe this is the part that pertains to me. I'm being assessed for, I believe, 18th Street and also the drainage system that was put in this whole area, in the South Bay area. And I'd just like to have my protest noted that, for one thing, I just bought this house a month after the notice of the preliminary hearing for this improvement was put in, and for some reason it wasn't picked up in my title policy or anything like this, although it wasn't a lien against me. But the people who owned the house before me say that they got no notice of a preliminary hearing or anything as to this improvement being made. The people who live next door to me say the same thing, and I just feel that it's not quite fair that to get assessed without being notified that this improvement is being made, and I don't like being assessed either for a drainage system that does no good. This drainage system is, I think, contributing to filling up a...
Excuse me, sir, for interrupting. What is your address, and what is the address of the next door neighbor?
1849 Coronado.
1824, sir.
Were notices given there, Mr.?
That's what he's checking right now.
I've already checked, sir, and they have the letters were sent out. I'll concede that point.
Generally, they would come back if they're not.
Well, in addition to the letters being sent out, all of the utility poles in the area prior and during the hearing schedule was posted by public notices. Also, a preliminary assessment was sent out. Yeah, also a preliminary assessment
They
sheet.
both, they say they didn't get this either. The next door neighbor is 1836, and he's also here, I believe.
Seems like you've got a couple of real unlucky neighbors because this don't happen.
Well, I would assume the same thing, sir. It's our word against the city's. I'm not trying to call anyone a liar or anybody, but
we would not suggest that that's necessary, but because post offices and other, particularly in that area, we've had a little problem with mail circulation. But more importantly, the legal requirements of posting in the area have been accomplished by the engineer. Mr. Engineer, correct me, when did you post the area? These are legal notices that are posted on the utility poles in the area, calling attention to the people, of all of the people in the area.
Well, I wasn't in the area at the time, but
The notice of affidavit of posting would be in your
Would
record.
be in this record here. Okay. What's your name, sir?
Amy, sir, E-M-I-G-H.
But he was not the owner of record at the time of the hearing. What was the previous owner's name?
Sage, sir.
Sage?
Yes, sir.
S-A-G-E? Clerk, tell us in just a minute.
Your Honor,
Yes, Mr. Law.
hopefully that there was notice sent out, but if the notice was not sent out, if there was some oversight in that, then you are still protesting this assessment, whether or not you had notice or not, and your reason for protest is that you feel that there is not enough material benefit to you in regards to the drainage. Is this correct, sir?
Well, yes, sir, on the drainage, and of course, I understand that I'm not being assessed for the improvement that was done to Coronado Avenue, a block away from me, and I feel this is also detrimental to my property value because it's made a speedway out of Coronado Avenue, and there are very few patrols come down there, cars buzzing up and down there, 70, 80 miles an hour continually, people squealing their tires.
Of course, that's a law enforcement problem there. If we have that problem, we certainly look into it because we have many good roads in town, and regardless whether it's built or not, we should watch these speedways. Mr. Manager, you take a note of that.
I've made a note of it.
Mr. Engineer, how many parcels are in it? It seems to be an awful long assessment list here. I might make an observation. I made a complaint like that on Nile Street, and the first one to receive a ticket, I think, was my son. So beware.
Yes, sir. I thought about that. Your Honor, as to this letter, I've already checked on this, and it was sent out according to the city clerk's records, and nothing came back. Check that out.
It's going down through a long list of names. They're trying to find it. If you've already checked it, I will assume that it was
365.
How many?
365.
365 names are checked. That's the protest area. This is on Coronado.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, we're at the point of confirming the assessment, and I think that the thing that we should be inviting today are any disputes between the people assessed and the assessment and distribution of the assessment. You're opposed to the total assessment, you're opposed to a certain portion of it, and if you are, if you could give us some reasons and justification why we should amend the assessment roll at this time, okay?
Well, sir, I don't really know if I could justify anything. I've looked into the council policy and the law on it, and it looks like I'm stuck. But the drainage doesn't help me any at all, and like I say, I never got a chance to say anything about it before. I'd like to say it so in case anything comes up on my part of Coronado, I would like to have it known already that I'm against this, and the fact that this property behind me, the drainage seems to hurt it. It's not on the assessment roll.
Well, Your Honor, is this protest then included in the 1%, 1.7% protest?
Yes, and also his neighbor, Mr. Kirk, next door neighbor.
He's also here.
Your Honor, unless there's some feeling on the city engineer here that there's been an improper balance of the assessment here, I would suggest that we move on with the hearing and unless you have any more questions, sir.
One other question, sir. I don't know if this is proper here or not, but I've found that in a case like this where a petition is put out to improve these streets, if you don't have any frontage on the property, you don't get any chance to see the petition or to sign the petition or to be in the percentage that's considered on it.
Yes, you do. Because on the first hearing on the resolution of feasibility, a notice goes out to the whole area in terms of the projected possible costs, and this immediately notifies everybody who is going to be assessed that there is an assessment coming and approximate cost. So you are notified. And we count area protests also.
Right, and we also count area protests.
This is weighed right in with the 60% that's required on the...
On the frontage, to initiate a petition, yes.
We've had
No.
60% petitions initiated, and we've had 75% opposition. Believe me, we weigh the 75 rather heavily when we've covered the area.
Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard on item number 5?
My name is Charles Kirk, and I live 1836 Coronado Avenue, right beside of Mr. Emmy, and we never saw any petition or we never got any notice as to the improvements of the streets in our area at the time. They may have been mailed, but if they were, we didn't get them.
Sir, how did you find out about this hearing today?
You got his mail.
We got a
Assessment.
This is the first communication you've had?
yes, sir. This is the first one we've had. And I am protesting due to the fact that we didn't have any knowledge of the what was going on, and also as Mr. Emmy says, the drainage is poor for us. It hasn't helped us a bit so far, and the street is widened above us, and that makes a speedway for a block there, and it's pretty severe.
Sir?
Charles L. and Susie
Yes,
Clerk.
that's right.
And how long have you been an owner of record?
Since 1957.
Notice went to you by mail on 9/22/64, September the 22nd, 1964.
We didn't receive it, sir, Your Honor.
Mr. Kirk,
Won't debate the question. We mailed one on that date.
what was the first date that you attempted to contact the city pertaining to this? There's a lot of activity going around there, and we had a rather spirited hearing. Have you been down to City Hall? Have you called City Hall prior to today?
No, sir.
Matter of fact, we had 2 public hearings in the area. Mr. Gabrielson and I attended one, and I think Mr. Gabrielson and Mr. Hahn attended another one. Where we had all of the people, a couple hundred of them, showed up at the hearing.
Well, we had a number of private meetings down there, too.
In
Well,
addition,
we not only
homeowners.
conformed to all of the required legal hearings, but we had supplemental hearings in the community. We had supplemental mailings out, tentative bills within 10%. And we have certain obligations, and we went way, way beyond those. And also, there is obligation on part of the citizen, too, when he sees something happening. If he doesn't understand it, he has some responsibility to check. But we've really gone way overboard, and I suppose it's conceivable this sort of thing can happen. But in a district this large and with the interest down there, I think that honestly that you should have exerted some effort to try and find out what was going on. Unless you're out of town, if you're on a trip or something.
Possibly it was gone.
No, we've been right there most of the time. But we didn't at the time know what was going on, and they started in, and thought we should have been petitioned or should have been notified.
Well, Mr. Kirk, I don't know how to tell you how diligently we tried, because when I was a councilman, prior to being elected to this job, I represented that area, and I remember this goes back at least 4 years ago when we first started talking about this, the people in the area asking for improvements in the drainage problem down there, and my gosh, we had, I don't know how many meetings of one sort or another for a long period of time.
Well, how about when the petition was circulated, Your Honor? Now, we've had a policy for some time, those who initiated and circulated the petition. Didn't anybody ever come by your house?
No, sir. Not at all.
Any of your neighbors?
No, sir.
You see the postings on the boards and on the telephone poles or whatever it is?
We did see a sign on a telephone post up on the corner of 18th Street at the time.
And that notice of improvement
on the posting on the telephone pole included all of the description of the area to be assessed and the reason for it, and actually a diagram of the district, doesn't it, Mr. Engineer? Doesn't it include a diagram of the district?
It only describes the improvements. It does not have a map of the district. It just describes the improvements.
It has all the description on it.
Your Honor,
Mr. Wells?
I imagine the only thing that actually we're required to do is the posting of the area on the telephone poles. I think this council makes an additional effort in not only mailing the notice to the people in the homes, but also mailing them the estimate of the assessment and so on, so that people will be fully informed of the total. I think it's unfortunate that for some odd reason we felt that it was mailed out and you weren't noticed. We did have real lengthy hearings on this. We amended it even to include a greater area by the request of some of the citizens. We feel that the project, when we went into it before, was a worthwhile project and then went ahead with it. Now we're at the point where it is completed and the contract is waiting to be paid. Our next responsibility is to confirm the assessment. Even though you did not receive notice, sir, and we did notice the polls and so on, I don't think we have any recourse here but to go ahead and to confirm the assessment, because I really don't see any arguments that have been advanced which would make us amend the assessment. Failure to be notified, unfortunately, doesn't qualify as a reason why we can cut an assessment. So, Your Honor, unless there is some further testimony, I think that we should enter it as a protest. Possibly the clerk can meet with the gentleman afterwards and see what the problem was and why he didn't receive some of the previous notices. But I think that we should move with the hearing, and if so, unless it's further, do you have any further questions, sir?
I think that stated my plans and my ideas, and thank you folks. And
we thank you, sir, for taking the time to get down here. Now, has his protest been recorded?
It's recorded here with the clerk, yes.
Mr.
Clerk and Mr. Mize at the same time.
Well, if there are no further protests, what is the total protest from the area? What does it constitute now?
It's still 1.5, all of these people.
1.5% of the total area. In view of that, I would move that we close the hearing, overrule the protests that have been entered, and confirm the assessment.
Second. Motion to close the hearing, overrule the protest, and confirm the assessment. Call a roll. Unanimous. By way of information, Mr. Kirk, I just happened to be checking that the first official action of this council was a meeting that started out on August the 19th, 1960. There was a whole series, that was an official meeting. There were a whole series of official meetings and other meetings held in the meantime. Strange that word never got around. Item number 6 on the docket is a hearing. It's the vacation of a portion of Navajo Road and revesting certain access rights in Lot 47 through 52, Princess Del Cerro, Unit Number 2.
No one to be heard, Your Honor. Move that we close the hearing, adopt the resolution of vacation.
Motion to close the hearing and adopt the resolution of vacation. Call the roll. Unanimous. Item number 7, awarding a contract to Burke & Company for the furnishing of air conditioning filters, cleaning and replacement.
Move to adopt.
Second. Motion to adopt item number 7. Call the roll. Unanimous. Item number 8, awarding a contract to Industry Supply Company for furnishing one 30-inch cast iron cross. Get it up. That's a water pipe, not a monument. 8, adopt. Call the roll. Unanimous. Item number 9, approving the plans and specifications for the improvement of Ski Beach and Mission Beach Park, phase number 4. Second. Top 9, call the roll. Unanimous. Item number 10, two resolutions relative to the final map of Pueblo Terrace. Top 10. 10, adopt, call the roll. Unanimous. Item number 100, continued from the meetings of June 15th, July 13th, August 10th, and September 7th, ordering a work and directing notice to invite bids for the construction of a protective seawall on Bird Rock Shore. Continue one with
Second.
Motion to continue for 1 week, call the roll. Unanimous. Item 101, authorizing the city manager to accept the work done in College Village subdivision and file a notice of completion.
Second.
Motion to adopt 101, call the roll. Unanimous. Item 102, authorizing the city manager to exercise the option to continue the agreement as amended with Frank L. Hope and Associates, dated June the 22nd, 1965, covering architectural service in connection with the design and development of the engineering plans and specifications for the construction of a multi-purpose stadium. Motion to adopt 102, call the roll. Unanimous. Item 103, employing law firm of O'Melveny and Myers as special legal counsel to prepare such forms and agreements, bonds, and trust indentures as are necessary to finance the construction of the stadium in Mission Valley. That's 103.
Second.
103, adopt, call the roll. Unanimous. Item 104, authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with Fred A. Johnson for the architectural service in connection with the remodeling of the Central Police Station.
Second.
1-4, adopt, call the roll. Unanimous. Item 1-5, authorizing the city manager to execute agreement with the San Diego Junior Chamber of Commerce to promote resources and best interests of the city of San Diego by the production of certain events.
Second.
Item 1-5, adopt, call the roll. Unanimous. Item 106, waiving and forgiving the accrued liquidated damages provided for in the contract with D.C. Moffett Company for the construction of an irrigation system at the Point Loma Sewage Treatment Plant.
That's 106.
106, adopt, call the roll. Unanimous. Item 107, authorizing Battalion Chief Ely to travel to Los Angeles, California to attend the National Fire Protection Association Conference on November 15th and 17th.
Adopt.
Second.
Adopt. 107, call the roll. Unanimous. 108, denying the claim of Irene J. Kershaw.
Adopt.
Second.
Adopt. 108, call the roll. Unanimous. Item 109, setting aside and dedicating certain previously accepted elements or easements of for public street purposes and naming the same Convoy Street and Claremont Mesa Boulevard.
Adopt.
109, adopt, call the roll. Unanimous. Item 110, setting aside and dedicating certain lands conveyed for the purpose of public street and incidents thereto and naming the same Convoy Street and Vicker Street.
That's 110.
110, adopt, call the roll. Unanimous. Item 111, setting aside and dedicating certain public lands conveyed for the purpose of a public street and incidents thereto and naming the same Convoy Street and Claremont Mesa Boulevard.
Adopt.
Second. Item 111, adopt, call the roll. Unanimous. Item 112, authorizing the mayor and the city clerk to execute a quitclaim deed, quitclaiming an easement for drainage purposes.
That's 112.
112, adopt, call the roll. Unanimous. Item 113, accepting the quitclaim of Sentinel Savings and Loan for water and sewer purposes.
Adopt. Second.
Adopt 113, call the roll. Unanimous. Item 114, establishing a new parking meter zone south side of Grape Street between Pacific Highway and California Street.
Suspension adopt.
Suspension adopt. 114, call the roll. Unanimous. Item 115, La Jolla Town Council requesting that major improvements to La Jolla Scenic Drive from Hillside Drive near the cross to Soledad Mountain Road be made. Further, that improvements be made to Soledad Mountain Road from La Jolla Scenic Drive south to be considered as a major street.
Refer to the manager.
Second.
Motion to refer to the city manager. 115, call the roll. Unanimous. Unanimous consent item.
Move the approval of unanimous consent.
Close the meeting on behalf of... Unanimous consent item is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Dale Counter as a cost estimator and for services in connection with the construction of Mission Valley Stadium.
Adopt.
Adopt the unanimous consent item. Call the roll.
Adopt the resolution of council attendance.
Motion to adopt the resolution of council attendance and to adjourn the meeting in honor.
I move that we adjourn the meeting in honor of Herb Baker and Fred Rohr.
Motion to adopt resolution of council attendance and adjourn the meeting in honor of Herb Baker and Fred Rohr. Call the roll.
Council is adjourned.